You've also found many bags of information. I think they call them burn bags. They're supposed to be burned, and they didn't get burned, having to do with how corrupt the 2020 election was. And when will that all come out?
Mr. President, I will be the first to brief you once we have that information collected. But you're right, we are finding documents literally tucked away in the back of safes and random offices in these bags and in other areas, which again speaks to the intent of those who are trying to hide the truth from the American people.
That moment from August appears to have foreshadowed what we saw play out this week in Fulton County, Georgia, where the FBI raided an elections office. We'll have the latest reporting on that operations and all the different questions it raises. Also, the ongoing questions surrounding Tulsi Gabbard's role in all of this. Why was the DNI director involved in the execution of a domestic search warrant? Plus, President Trump last night seemed to contradict his own border czar, Tom Homan, who said earlier in the day there are plans to reduce the number of federal officers in Minnesota. What is going on in that state? And we'll bring you the latest from Capitol Hill on a deal to avoid a government shutdown and how soon Congress could get it passed. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Friday, January 30th. Along with Willie and me, we have the co-host of our 9 a.m. hour, staff writer at The Atlantic, Jonathan Lemire, the host of Politics Nation on MS Now, Reverend Al Sharpton. He's the president of the National Action Network. And writer at large for the New York Times, Elizabeth Bumiller joins us this morning. And Willie, we start this morning back in Fulton County.
Yeah, we want to know what's going on in Fulton County right now. A list of new questions this morning about that FBI search of a Fulton County election facility. Agents seized hundreds of boxes of materials related to the 2020 presidential election, apparently as part of President Trump's false conspiracy theory that he only lost because the vote was rigged. The Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, in an extraordinarily unusual move seen at the site of the FBI raid. Senate Democrats want to know why she's there. Intelligence Committee Vice Chairman Senator Mark Warner of Virginia leading the charge, asking what a domestic FBI investigation has to do with the cabinet member who is tasked with handling international crises.
This is a Director of National Intelligence that is affirmatively moved to cut back the Foreign Malign Influence Center on elections. What the heck is she doing on the FBI serving a domestic warrant? You know, if this doesn't concern the heck out of every American, it sure as hell should. This is a person who's got no business interfering in elections.
This morning, there's new reporting from the Wall Street Journal that details Gabbard's role leading the administration effort to re-examine those 2020 election results. The Journal reports she's been sidelined from traditional DNI duties and did not play any meaningful role in the Venezuela mission. But she has begun studying information about voting machines, whatever that means, analyzed data from swing states, and pursued theories that President Trump has promoted to claim the 2020 election was taken from him. Gabbard regularly has briefed both the president and chief of staff Susie Wiles and is expected to prepare a report. President Trump was asked last night about Gabbard's role.
She's working very hard on trying to keep the election safe, and she's done a very good job. And they, as you know, they got into the votes. You got a signed judge's order in Georgia, and you're going to see some interesting things happening. They've been trying to get there for a long time.
We've got the man to talk to on this subject, the chief political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. He's also an MS Now contributor. Greg, when we see your face, we know there's either a close election in Georgia or something strange going on around a close election in Georgia. So here we are back in 2020. Let's just take a step back from your reporting, from the sources that you have on the ground. What exactly is the grounds for this search warrant to begin with, and then we can get into Tulsi Gabbard's role?
Yeah, and you're right. There's two things going on. There's this close election, and it was strange, something strange going on. But the grounds, really, local officials say there are no grounds. This is an election that's done and behind us, right? 6 years ago now. But yet, these false claims of election fraud still persist, and it's been one of the fixations from not just the president, but also his allies to sow doubt and concerns about that 2020 election. And, as shocking and surprising as it was, the timing of the raid on the Fulton County election site, also leaders here have been preparing for that, right? It has been something that the president has hinted at since he recaptured the White House. And so I know I've been getting texts for on and off for months saying it could be today. It could be today when something like this happened. So it was stunning, the scope of it. It was stunning, the timing of it. And I wouldn't say it actually caught some figures, at least here, completely off guard because of the president's hinting that this would happen. As for Tulsi Gabbard, oh, sorry.
No, that's okay. Keep going. As for Tulsi Gabbard, you were saying?
Yeah, as for Tulsi Gabbard, I was on the scene, minutes after I got a tip that this raid was happening. And, federal officials, as a reporter on the scene, you're just trying to figure out what's happening. And I got a text from a federal official saying Tulsi Gabbard and a senior FBI agent will be on the scene at 6 p.m. And this was maybe 2 or 3 p.m. And I did a double take because, again, why Tulsi Gabbard? It was the immediate question that we had on the ground there of all the people who the Trump administration could have sent. That was not on our bingo card that morning.
Yeah. You pointed out that it was a federal prosecutor in Missouri who was recently appointed by President Trump that signed the warrant for the raid in Fulton County, not the U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Georgia. His name does not appear on the warrant at all. Is there any significance to that? And what is the reaction? You said some folks were not surprised at all. Were they prepared? What do they think the feds are going for?
Yeah, well, the name on the warrant was the U.S. Attorney from Missouri. So that another confounding thing for local officials here, because the local U.S. Attorney, who's appointed by the president, his name was not on there. So some of the reporting that's come out has shown from Bloomberg Law has shown that that attorney, U.S. Attorney from Missouri, has been given sort of special authorization to pursue election integrity cases. That might be one reason. There's other speculation surrounding Dominion, which is the voting machines that Georgia used. That company was bought by a company based in Missouri. So there's local officials, again, are just again, some of them weren't surprised that this happened. They were surprised by the timing, but all that has come out since has confounded people, and there's still so many questions just piling up on each other about this investigation.
Greg, we'll remind our viewers that back in November of 2020, the vote in Georgia was counted once, then it was counted again, and then in December of 2020, it was counted a third time. Secretary of State Brad Raffensperger, a Republican who supported President Trump, said, we want to make sure we got it right. We did. This puts this to rest. Joe Biden won the state of Georgia. So I'm curious this morning, how is Secretary of State Raffensperger? How is Governor Kemp, both of whom rebuked Donald Trump back then, despite the fact they are Republicans who said they supported him generally? How are they responding to what's going on right now?
Yeah, so far they are keeping rather silent. Secretary of State Raffensperger is now running for the Republican nomination to be the governor of Georgia. And so he's locked in a really fierce battle against Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones, who has Trump's endorsement, and another Republican, Attorney General Chris Carr. So he has to capture some of the MAGA base. So he's been kind of treading lightly around this issue in some sense, while at the same time he's rejected the Trump administration's attempts to get Georgia voting records, saying that he won't hand them over to a third party without certain controls, certain guardrails. As for Governor Kemp, he is in a rather strange position himself as well, because this long feud that we've been talking about, we've been chronicling for the last 6 years or so between him and Donald Trump, it's reached not just tentative truce, it's reached a truce that's actually held for the last year or so. And so I don't think he wants to do anything to upset that truce. So he has been very, very cautious about any sort of criticism or concern that he is publicly displaying towards Donald Trump. I have no indication about his private concerns, but I know in the past he's had many, many private misgivings about where the Trump narrative has gone.
And Tulsi Gabbard's presence there wholly inappropriate, but in some ways not surprising. She has for many years been sort of conspiracy-minded, and she's fallen out of favor in the Trump White House, and many perceive this is her effort to get back in Trump's good graces. So, Greg, this is obviously about 2020, but many Democrats I've talked to say, well, it's also about 2026. It's also about 2028. You'll undermine trust in elections, to be sure. But what else are local officials, Georgia officials, Fulton County officials telling you about what their fears are as to what this means for these next couple of elections?
Yeah, you're exactly right. For Trump, it might be about 2020. For local Republicans here, it's about the next two elections, because the fear in Georgia, the fear in Fulton County for Democrats and for voting rights advocates and even some Republicans is that this could be a pretext for a state law that passed after the 2020 election that gives the state the power to intervene in local elections if there is an investigation, if there's some sort of reason to do so. And local officials feel that this is the pretext that Trump allies on the state election board are looking for to take over the Fulton County election. This is Georgia's most populous county. It's also one of the biggest Democratic strongholds in Georgia. So if the state election board, which is a 5-member board, but 3 of them are close Trump allies, is able to take over the Fulton County election system, then advocates here are worried that they can make pretty significant changes that could limit voting rights going into the 2026 midterms and the election thereafter.
All right. Chief political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein, thank you so much. And Elizabeth B. Miller, there's a lot going on. You know, whether it's Minnesota, an update on the killings there. You had Homan there yesterday, and then the president seemed to be confusing what Homan said he was doing. And the latest post, I think, Lemire, you pointed out to me, was the president pretty much turning on Alex Preddy. And because of the new video that has surfaced that the president, I guess, finally saw of him kicking a taillight.
Yeah, very briefly, just saying he calls Preddy an agitator and perhaps an insurrectionist.
Right.
He goes on to condemn what he did in the first video, clearly, you know, sort of trying to undermine the stories that have been built around Preddy since his death.
So you got a little bit of chaos going on here and there and everywhere, and then this Fulton County story playing out. I'm just wondering, big picture, what stands out to you about what's happening in Fulton County? What questions does it raise in your mind?
Well, I think Jonathan was right. I think it's there's a number of things going on. One is that it certainly creates uncertainty, or they're trying to create uncertainty around the 2026 midterms coming up this fall, and also about 2028. Tulsi Gabbard has had a very rocky first year in the administration. She is out of favor, where she was out of favor. It's almost as if they have given her a job. She was kept out of any kind of planning for Venezuela, which would have been part of her purview. And now now she, according to some officials who've talked to the Times, she is been given the job of looking for foreign influence in a number of states, in a number of states' elections in 2020. That could keep her busy for the rest of this year. But it really is about creating uncertainty, and it's also just about the continuing chaos in this administration as we, careen from one crisis to the next. And right now it seems to be Fulton County and the president turning again on Alex Preddy after being advised to cool it, and is now back to sort of normal Trump behavior and going after him, and also undermining what his new border czar is saying in Minneapolis, who's saying we're going to calm things down, we're going to pull back Trump forces. And of course, he said last night at the Kennedy Center that's not the case. So it's back to just more of the Trump chaos. He's talking about striking Iran. It goes on and on and on. He's still there's negotiations over Greenland, which are not going well. So it's kind of like every week there's a new absolute crisis.
Yeah, much more on Minneapolis and Iran in a few minutes. But Rev, back to Georgia for a minute. Let's take a second and recognize why this matters in some ways. We know Trump was galled that he lost it. We all remember the phone call to Secretary of State Raffensperger urging him to find those 11,000 or so votes he needed. It was a big deal for Democrats that Georgia flipped for President Biden in 2020, though Kamala Harris lost it narrowly 4 years later. Just remind people who votes there and why Fulton County sort of is seen as a symbol in Atlanta of an ascendant, perhaps, Democratic Party, what the future of the Democratic Party could look like.
Well, you have a major part of the voting bloc there, the black community. Fulton County certainly represents that. And you must remember that we're not talking just theory to 28. Senator Ossoff is up for re-election, and he was the first Jewish senator. And you had Raphael Warnock, who's been elected, who was the first black. So Georgia really showed, not only with the Biden win later, that we can put a black and a Jew who, in the past history of Georgia, would have been unthinkable to be in the U.S. Senate, in the U.S. Senate. So as you reconfigure now the voting that they're investigating to try and discredit so they can impose their friendly voting authorities over Fulton County, they have strategic reasons that give us historic nervousness about what they're trying to do, and it would reverberate all the way around the country. If Georgia falls, they feel that it would send a message everywhere, and it would impact all the way to 28.
All right, we've got a lot more ahead pertaining to this story. Also still ahead on Morning Joe, President Trump last night appeared to contradict border
in the world could have executed the most sophisticated, powerful raid, not just in American history, I would say in world history.
Under your leadership, you've ended at least 8 wars, okay? But probably the most important and underreported war that this president ended was Joe Biden and the Democrats' war on Main Street.
Thanks to you, the Trump accounts and next generation's America will benefit from today's record-breaking economy. I think 2026 is going to be the year for the Trump boom.
You are fixing everything with your policies. You have changed America and created the golden age.
I mean, I can't. I mean, William, how do you characterize that scene? It's a scene of like
North Korean is one way, I guess.
That's a good one. Yeah.
It's very dear leader. First of all, the heroes of D-Day will be shocked to know that the Venezuela raid was the most impressive raid in the history of the world.
Yeah.
But also just the Jonathan Lemire, something we've talked about in the past, which is the alleged alpha energy that's supposed to be coming out of the Trump Republican Party. It just doesn't get more beta than what you see around that table once a month.
No, bend the knee and praise the president. He kept it shorter this time. He said, we'll skip some of the members, which it was noted.
Well, he fell asleep last time.
Yeah, I was going to say, he also perhaps allowed him to keep his eyes open. He kept things moving to stay awake.
So used to flattery.
So we didn't hear from Secretary Noem, which many people were eager to. But Mika, there was no doubt that there was no shortage of shall we say, over-the-top praise of President Trump's.
Fair to say, don't need to light hair on fire. That's not normal.
No.
That's not normal.
Yeah, well,
Scott Besson, that's not normal. You jumping around, jumping into every topic just to jump to the president's defense, even when it doesn't make any sense, and you are bashing through amendments just for the president. It's not normal.
It's not normal, but the disturbing thing, I think, is that it tells us we have a president that is in such need and has such insecurity. Do foreign governments play on that? Do people in business plan? If you can understand he is that needy, then it can be manipulated by anybody, which could occur to the detriment of
It's not like the Americans didn't know about this.
Right.
He won the election. This is what he did his first term. He needed very much for everyone to desperately disgrace themselves in front of him. Coming up, one cabinet member who did not speak at yesterday's meeting was Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. She did, however, go on TV. Among the several cabinet members who did not speak was Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem. But she did appear on Fox News last night, continuing to defend her agency and ICE operations in the aftermath of 2 deadly shootings by agents in Minnesota. Sean Hannity asked her whether some statements she and others in the Trump administration made shortly after both incidents were perhaps made prematurely.
Well, Sean, I know you realize that that situation was very chaotic and that we were being relayed information from on the ground from CBP agents and officers that were there. We were using the best information we had at the time, seeking to be transparent with the American people and get them what we knew to be true on the ground. So we will continue to follow the investigation that the FBI is leading and giving them all the information that they need to bring that to a conclusion and make sure that the American people know the truth of the situation and how we can go forward and continue to protect the American people.
People seem to be upset over the term domestic terrorism. Why do you believe that's appropriate? Because you used it in both cases.
Well, Sean, we're continuing to gather information, and the FBI leading this investigation is important to make sure that we talk about both these situations appropriately. In the Renee Good situation, we have more information as it happened previously, and we'll continue to get to the truth of all of this. But we can't distract from the fact of how we got here, and we got here because we had a Biden administration that allowed an invasion over our southern border.
So actually, the FBI leading the investigation in both cases is extremely disturbing and also not normal, and also does not help restore even a tiny bit of public trust. One of the big problems in both the killings of Renee Good, shot at point-blank range, one shot right in the front car window through her head, and the killing of Alex Preddy, which actually took 5 ICE agents to get him down to the ground and 2 ICE agents to pepper his body with bullets after he was disarmed. The problem with the FBI leading the investigation, the federal authorities leading the investigation, is that the head of the FBI was also one of the people who rushed to judgment and criticized Alex Preddy for doing something completely legal, which was having a legal firearm on him, which was taken away before they shot him. 2 U.S. citizens shot dead in the street, and Kristi Noem is saying it's so great that the FBI has taken the investigation away from the state. And if you dig a little deeper, even in Hennepin County, all the state officials would very much like their investigations back, please. They would very much like the evidence back, please. A federal judge ruled in the case of Alex Preddy that evidence cannot be destroyed. Yet, where is his gun? Where are the shell casings from the shooting of Alex Preddy? Where's the evidence from the scene that was quickly whisked away? Where are the ICE officers? Who are they? What exactly is the status of the ICE officer who shot Renee Good? Is he on desk duty? We asked repeatedly on this show whether or not the 2 officers, 2 ICE agents who shot Alex Preddy, pointing their guns down toward the ground where he was with his hands showing. So a lot of people call that kind of execution-style shooting. Some are calling it murder. An investigation would help, but not an investigation done by the people who prejudged these cases. Within an hour, they judged the person who appears to be, from all video and all regular, normal people who saw what happened, appears to be the victim. But we don't know. You want an investigation, and yet you take the investigation away from the very people who should be doing the investigation because it is their jurisdiction, and that is the law. It's also their community, and they will do a better job. And, when this is, and you detain people who saw it, that's scary. That scares people, and that instills, on top of all this chaos bred by ICE agents just marauding through town and breaking in cars and houses, that scares people and adds to the already created chaos by the government. So one thing that would really help is if the state could have their investigations back, please, so that these 2 killings at close range could be investigated in a real way that the public would trust. So meanwhile, during his news conference yesterday, border czar Tom Homan acknowledged that mistakes had been made. So you have one person in the government acknowledging that mistakes had been made by federal officers in Minnesota. I think Stephen Miller also said that procedure or protocol wasn't followed. Okay, well, that's the start, but then where's the investigation? Give it back to the state. Adding, Homan, that he wants to make the operation safer, more efficient, and by the book. He also said there could be a drawdown. There could be a drawdown of agents there. But President Trump last night appeared to contradict him.
Will you be pulling back immigration enforcement agents out of Minnesota?
We want to keep our country safe. We'll do whatever we can to keep our country safe.
So not pulling back?
No, not at all.
Again, contradicting what Tom Homan said earlier in the day. Meanwhile, a new report details the ongoing power struggle behind the scenes of President Trump's immigration enforcement efforts as officials overseeing the campaign fight amongst each other for power. Joining us now, staff writer at The Atlantic, Michael Scherer. He co-wrote the piece titled "Battles Are Raging Inside the Department of Homeland Security." Michael, good morning. So, among which members of the cabinet are these battles raging?
So for quite a while now, there have been two camps when it comes to how the deportation should proceed, and two camps when it comes to how the wall on the border should be built. Tom Homan, who you just saw there, and Rodney Scott, the head of Customs and Border Patrol, are in one camp. On the other side, you have Kristi Noem and her top deputies, including Corey Lewandowski, her functioning chief of staff, a special government employee, who have been pushing for more aggressive measures. You know, when Greg Bovino was in Minnesota, he wasn't reporting to his boss, the head of CBP, he's a CBP officer. He was reporting basically around his boss to Noem, and Rodney Scott had made clear he wasn't comfortable with the methods Bovino was using. Tom Homan made very clear yesterday that he also had concerns with how things have been going. So you've had sort of a shakeup. The president has acknowledged in this power struggle. You know, the president from the first term, the second term, doesn't mind these disagreements. He doesn't mind having people fight amongst themselves below him. But the fight is very much still alive. On Monday, we reported Rodney Scott put out a memo to CBP, an email saying, I just want to remind you all, I'm in charge of this agency. Everything comes through me. And 2 days later, the general counsel of Department of Homeland Security effectively rescinded that memo, saying it hadn't gone through legal review. So there's very much a bureaucratic war still ongoing inside the department.
And coming up, Joe's conversation with the guys from Pod Save America. They game out the upcoming midterms, leadership in Congress, and whether the troubling events in Minneapolis will have a lasting impact on the nation. That's next on Morning Joe. We have breaking news for you. Former CNN anchor Don Lemon was arrested late last night on federal charges tied to a protest earlier this month at a church in St. Paul, Minnesota. Lemon says he was reporting as a journalist when demonstrators interrupted a service to protest immigration enforcement. A magistrate judge previously rejected the case against him, but prosecutors later sought and obtained his arrest. Lemon was taken into custody in Los Angeles and is scheduled to appear in federal court this morning. His lawyer, Abby Lowell, calls the prosecution an unprecedented attack on the First Amendment. We have Lisa Rubin here, Molly John Fax joining us. But Jonathan Lemire, can we go through a little more what happened in St. Paul in the church?
Yeah, grind mode on, can't kill my drive. Turn the pressure up, I come alive. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. World in my hands when the grind mode's on. Wake up with a vision, I'm locked on the target. Turn pain into fuel, I'm a flame, I spark it. No shortcuts here, I embrace every test. Pressure on my shoulders, still I handle it best. I was made for the climb, every loss, every scar. Built me in the steel, now I shine like a star. If the road gets rough, I just double my speed. Ambition on 10, I was born to lead. Grind mode on, I don't fold, I don't quit. Hunger in my chest, every beat I commit. Eyes on the prize, no sleep till it's won. Word in my hands when the grind mode's on. They said limits exist, but I shattered the frame. Every wall in my path is just fuel for the frame. Discipline heavy, but my spirit is free. I don't chase success, success chases me. I'm the storm and the calm, I'm the rise, I'm the proof. Every bar that I drop is the grind in the booth. Blood, sweat, tears, that's the code I trust. I don't wait for the crown, I earn it, I must.